Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Thanks for being here. I appreciate you. This week I wanted to tell a story about this pour. Now, sometimes a pour doesn't always go as a pour was planned initially. Now you can torch all your bubbles all you want and get your colors all sorted, but really this comes down to execution and lack of desire to want to scrape anything off any canvas I ever paint on. So without further ado, let's get into some story time. Alrighty, so this paint was actually supposed to be a very simple 3-color swipe with a mirrored look was my game plan. So I layered my colors, my copper, my gold, and my pewter, which was going just fine up until this point with my small bead of gold. I know gold doesn't like to swipe super well for me, so I was very cautious with the amount of paint I was going to use here. And just lastly adding some pewter as well. And now the game plan here was to simply swipe through towards myself and then turn it around and swipe back towards myself like a mirrored look. So as I get into my pewter, I decided to also add some Amsterdam white with some Australian Floetrol as my cell activating color, and then swiped with, as you can see, some wax paper. Now, as I get into this white, here's where things go awry. And with myself and my pouring journey, I really don't like to scrape off any paintings because I find it's A, ways to paint, and B, a big pain to kind of get over. So as we get into my first swipe with my wax paper, this is going just horribly wrong. I am swiping black oxide into the colors. It's creating a mess, and there I just didn't have enough black on my base coat to continue through the edge of the painting. Now going back for a second attempt, I really was only getting more white and really just kind of pushing that color around. So from here, what does a patient do? We have to take a moment and do some self-reflection, we'll call it. Okay, and getting back into the painting. So here I am now. You can see my face and my head and body in the reflection of this painting. I am actually rubbing my hands back and forth, trying to figure out what to do because my brain's like, oh no, you screwed up. How do we move forward here? What's game plan number 2? Or plan B, we'll call it. This was actually sped up. I stood there for about a minute and 10 seconds, not knowing what to do. So what do we do as our plan B? Well, we swipe again, because why not, right? It's already kind of wrecked, so let's just give it one more try and see if I can't get more color to go through this swipe. And now I left these swipes in on real time to show you how gross and how terrible these turned out. So again, I was missing a ton of color, ton of black on the base coat, so the colors didn't spread nearly as far. And from here, there was some words said. You could fill in the insert as you'd wish, and I was, at this point, just considering my life choices and what I was going to do next on this pour. So ultimately, again, I spent a lot of time here thinking on what could I possibly do to just keep going. Now, I didn't want to scrape it. I don't do that, so I grabbed all my color and decided to just go for it. And also, here's one time where I'm thankful that by mixing my gold and my copper and my pewter, I had around 6 or 7 ounces of paint left in my cups, which really served me well because I only mixed about 12 ounces of black oxide. And I did need around 20, 21, 22 ounces total to cover my whole canvas area in order to get any kind of action for my tilting if I had a chance here. So luckily I had color. I had no intention of doing a bit of a wrecked pour again this week with, again, the same colors I chose a few weeks back. So I guess we're going for a wrecked look in a few moments here with after this pewter. But I guess here's a lesson in terms of, for me anyway, of deciding to not scrape but shift. We'll say shift to plan B and keep going, keep trying, because this is all fun, right? Like it's meant to be a cool thing we do. And I didn't want to just begin from scratch, mixing my blacks and my coppers and my colors again. So I decided to keep on trucking and try to see what comes of it, right? So here I'm just breaking up my colors into some patterns and wanting to make a bit of design as well to make sure that the pour I'm going to make now comes out in somewhat of a decent fashion in the end. Alright, and as I wrap up the breaks on those colors, I'm going into my lacing on these swipes. Now, it's been about 2 months of using Australian Floetrol as my cell activator, which is working beautifully. Now, if you are new to lacing or cells generally, you'll find there's 1,000 ways to mix your cell activator. I use 1/3 titanium white by Amsterdam and 2/3 Australian Floetrol, and this is what I get. So this works just fine for me. I'm sure others use other things too, which come out just as beautiful. So do whatever works best for you and keep trying other things too. It's always worth a shot. And anyway, I found that with this particular recipe, this is what I get, and it's quite pretty. So going through the copper golden pewter gave me a really defined look on what these colors are and what metallics can do. So I was quite happy with the overall look of the lacing prior to getting into my tilts. All right, now my question or statement of the week for this week's pour. Now, how many of you out there who are pouring artists do scrape your paintings when you're unhappy with how they've turned out? Now, in my 2+ years of doing this so far, I have only scraped one painting ever, and it was probably in my first month or two when I was like, this is garbage, and I think I actually wound up throwing it away. Now, I don't like to scrape, again, for the reason I mentioned before, is that I think it's a waste of paint. You can always keep going and try new things. And for me, although these stretches and tilts took like 19 hours, I found that initially you have an idea, right? So my mirrored swipe look is what I wanted. Now that went out the window real soon after I began the pour. So again, shifted to plan B and went with what I had. If I had more paint, I could have tried to add some more oxide as my base, but didn't have that luxury. So I decided to again shift my thinking on what I wanted to do and try to make something out of nothing. So here we are with my tilts again being sped up quite quick because we were waiting a long time for this color. But anyhow, for those of you who do pour, do you scrape? And if you do, why do you scrape? Are you unhappy with what you see? Do you prefer to just begin from start through to the end? I'm curious on what your processes are there and what your thoughts are behind pours that may not turn out initially how you thought when you first began. All right, now as I wrap up my tilts on this pour, I would love for some constructive criticism or feedback on this painting. Now, I'm just taking a break here because this thing was heavy and I needed some time to readjust on this last corner. Anyway, what do you think on how this pour ultimately turned out as? Because again, I was going for an entirely different look initially and it didn't work out, so I had to tilt quite slow and quite controlled in this last corner, just making sure to get it right off the corner, then bring that paint back to the center, and that did take probably 3 or 4 minutes. So after this corner, we are going to zip right through to the end and show you the finished product. But again, I'm curious on what you guys think. How would you rank my comeback on this pour? Here we are as my final placement before the overhead wet look. Okay, now as we go in for a bit of an overhead look at the end of the video, this is a story of resiliency and grit and determination not to have to start from scratch. So if I was newer to pouring in my first, second, sixth month as a newer artist, I would have thrown this directly in the garbage and moved on to a brand new canvas. But with this lacing, I believe that the fact that I think this is incredibly pretty shows you can have a plan B or a step 2 and just go for it, right? So if you have enjoyed this video, please click the like button, and if you're new to here, please subscribe, and we will catch you again in the next one.